Welcome to the first episode, I guess, of the Thinking Tech podcast. Um, it's a pleasure to be here with Joshua Pottel. Thank you for being here. We're at the
Thank you.
offices of Molecular Forecaster.
Thanks for having us.
Having a nice little tea, Bengal tea, in the Molecular Forecaster cup. So, yeah, I mean, Josh, you're the CEO of Molecular Forecaster. You have a background in chemistry. Originally from Montreal and still living in Montreal, which is great. Um, if you could describe your work that you do here in a couple of sentences to someone that's not in the field, what would you say?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Thomas. Really, I think humbled to be on the inaugural episode. Hopefully, it can make the audience informed and coming back for more. Uh, Here, we aim to help discover medicines more quickly. We use computers to do that. So, without getting too technical, we're really working at the basic science, foundational science level, trying to help other companies discover medicines with the help of our technology to help patients here in Canada and around the world.
That sounds like a great mission, a great plan. I would first want to start with what first sparked your interest in chemistry and computational drug discovery in the whole field.
Yeah, I started with an interest in chemistry at the CEGEP level, which is kind of like our junior college here in Quebec. Um, Chemistry, someone said, I don't remember who to kind of give this credit to, because I don't think it was me, but chemistry is as close to magic as you'll come in science. Um, I loved the problem solving elements of chemistry. It wasn't as much memorization as biology, and I was good at that. So it built confidence and got me more and more into it. The bridge to computers came from a professor that I had in CEGEP, Dr. Aniko Lisi, will never forget. Went to ask her, she was my organic chemistry prof, and I went to ask her if she recommended studying something alongside chemistry because I knew I wanted to do an undergrad in chemistry. What would she recommend? And she told me in her infinite wisdom, this is 2008. Um, she said, learn how computers work. Not that computers would replace scientists, but scientists who knew how to use computers would replace scientists that didn't know how to use computers.
Hmm.
And that was enough for me to minor in computer science at McGill, and then be able to bridge those two together in my PhD.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I think I can relate a bit to that in the sense that I was originally in biochemistry and then switched into computer science because that memorization aspect, as much as it's interesting, the biology, all the proteins and all the concepts are great, but I found that in studying it, it was less motivating, less fascinating than if you would do something a bit more magical in a sense where you could create a little bit, such as for me it was computer science.
Yeah.
And as well, yeah, I mean, we're also seeing that nowadays with you should be learning AI, you should be learning all these new systems because they're not going to replace you, but they might people with AI will likely replace you. So it's a funny second trend where we're kind of seeing another turning in the technology. Um, but yeah, you also completed then your PhD at McGill as well after your undergrad. That's correct.
That's right. So I
Yeah.
did my PhD technically in chemistry, but in computational chemistry.
Okay.
Professor Nicolas Moitessier in the chem department here at McGill has a lab that bridges medicinal chemistry or organic synthesis with computational chemistry.
Hmm.
And so it was an opportunity to uh, be more on the in the dry lab, as they say, coding, developing software tools to help the chemists in the lab, and then you had this kind of feedback loop, um, having challenges and problems identified by the chemists that came to us with how could we make them more efficient, and so we would
Right.
try to develop tools, and then created this cycle, and for me it spoke to my strengths, which were definitely not being in the wet lab,
Yeah.
which was not for me.
Yeah. No. Fair enough. How was it different from the undergrad in this sense? What were like some of the pivotal moments between the two?
I mean, doing a PhD, I mean, it's everything about in being independent research, learning how to think through a problem, plan your time, organize your thoughts. Um, a balance between focus and exploration. Um, yeah, in undergrad, I mean, you're kind of guided toward like this is what you should do, and it's
Hmm.
mostly execution focused. PhD is more strategy focused, leaves more room for creativity, and you develop those skills over time. I think other experiences in your life will inform some of your kind of early days, but then I think the goal of the PhD is to learn how to
Right.
learn how to problem solve, and not just learn a specific um, task or to
Right.
do. It's learn how to think, learn how
Hmm.
to strategize.
And how to apply it as well, I
Well,
guess.
of course, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
but the engineers are that's what they're for.
Yeah.
So you talk about computer science, and there's a theory part, and then there's kind of a hands-on application part. And
Hmm.
certainly, what my PhD was a little bit more on the theory side. Um, heading more into
Yeah.
I did a postdoc in San Francisco,
Hmm.
and heading there was more hands-on focused and more application focused, I would say,
Right.
with more real-world relevance.
How did that come up, the opportunity to go to San Francisco? And also, like, how was it, the whole transition? I mean, originally based in Montreal, from Montreal, moving all the way there. How was
Yeah,
that?
big change
Yeah.
for sure. So it came up because our lab at McGill hosted Professor Brian Schuckett,
Hmm.
who's a professor at UCSF in San Francisco. He's a computational chemist, so a chemist by training. Actually, a double major in chemistry and history,
Okay,
so
interesting.
a very interesting background.
Yeah.
Um, we hosted him sometime in early 2015, I believe February. Got to know each other. He's Canadian originally. We had a lot in common, similar sense of humor, similar
Yeah.
love of hockey, and so we were just chatting a lot during the visit. When he left, it's my understanding that he asked Nick if any students were graduating. They were looking to hire postdocs. Come April-ish of that year, my sister was due to give birth to my nephew, she lives out in the Bay Area, and I was going out to visit and spend some time and be there
Yeah.
for that. And so I wrote to Brian and said, "Hey, I'm coming in May. I'll be in the area. Like, it'd be great to catch up and talk a little bit more." Nick had mentioned that maybe there was an opportunity. He said, "Sure. Why don't you come give a talk in the lab? Why don't you come, meet the group?"
Hmm.
I thought it was casual.
Yeah.
I found out later that that was an interview. I spent the whole day with them.
Were you prepared before going in, like, or did you find out afterwards?
Somewhere in between. I mean, I think I knew that
It was
you
important to
learn
you,
that like
but.
any interaction is an interview of sorts. Is
Hmm.
any relationship building is you're building for the future of that relationship.
Hmm.
Did I know it was a formal interview? No. I got the schedule. The more information I got about the day, the more I understood that what it was going to be like. But it was a full day there,
Okay.
presenting with the group, meeting with everybody, kind of one on one, lunch, dinner. It was really full day. The fortunate, unfortunate piece was that my sister went into labor that night.
Oh wow.
So I actually bolted from the dinner a little bit early because I had to hop on the train to head down south to then stay at the hospital for 3-4 hours after that.
Wow.
So it
I
was
mean,
a
I can
really long
imagine.
day, but all is well. I got an offer to join the lab.
Yeah.
My nephew was born healthy. My
What a
sister was doing
wonderful
great.
time.
So it was a neat trip in May. And then, yeah, made the move in December of that year with my partner and our dog. It was a big change for me. First time kind of living away from home. I never did really the sleepaway camp thing even. So it was definitely a change. Hard to leave when we did. Um, my partner had lived she did some schooling in Halifax and in Toronto, and so she had a little bit more experience
Hmm.
with that. But we packed up the car and did a 4 or 5 day road trip in early December across the country. Moved to San Francisco and spent almost 3 years there.
Wow, wow, wow. Did you miss the winters when you were there or no? Now that you're
At
back here
the
as well?
first year, probably not.
Yeah.
Uh, Between 18 and 23 Celsius every day of the year.
Mm. I mean, you're a hockey guy as well. I mean, did you still watch the hockey?
Try to
Yeah.
West Coast, so Montreal games 4 p.m. Was a bit more difficult. Um, yeah, it was a lot of changes in a lot of ways. I'm a dual citizen, so it was
Okay.
logistically easy, which for a lot of people that's another hurdle to get
Hmm.
over. But yeah, just a different way of life a little bit.
Hmm.
Research is different, culturally it's different. San Francisco is an awesome place to be. great food scene, comedy scene, nature scene. You can go surfing and skiing in the same day if you're into those things. We did a lot of hiking while we were there. My dog had to get accustomed to the lack of grass. That's the city is pretty dense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it was a change. But yeah, missed the seasons eventually.
Yeah,
Second year, it
yeah,
started to wear on us a little bit. No fall colors, no winter. It was nice to only have one wardrobe and not have to have
that is
a
true.
plus 40, minus 40 set of clothes. But yeah, it was a neat experience for sure.
Yeah, no, I'd love to check it out over there. It seems like a place where there's a lot of innovation, a lot of like, I don't know, free thinking as well. There's a lot of good ideas and things move fast, it seems like. So yeah, looking forward to eventually, checking out what's going on there. But after that, you then moved into industry, right? You then started molecular forecaster. Could you take me through like how the idea came up and really what was the need for molecular forecaster? What was the idea before? And has it changed as well, like along its growth?
So I can't take credit for the kind of creation of the company in general. So to give a bit of context, Molecular Forecaster incorporated in 2010.
Okay.
So it was just before I started my PhD in the lab. Um, the effort existed as more of it lived in this academic translation space for a long time. Montreal didn't have the same startup community that it does now back then. Between 2007, 8, and kind of 2012, 13 is also the recession. In the economy, a lot of pharma left here. Montreal had a huge pharmaceutical R&D
Hmm.
community. Merck Frost, AstraZeneca, Boehringer, Vertex, all had R&D sites here,
Right.
and they all closed up shop over that kind of 5-6 year period.
Wow.
So a lot of companies started to emerge at that time, but a company like ours, it was not the best time to be here locally.
Hmm.
So we being Molecular Forecaster, benefited from living in that academic space where research went on. My PhD research, in a lot of ways, went into the company technology.
Hmm.
Um, but only in 2018, when I moved back to Montreal, did we have someone full time in the business.
Okay. Wow.
So kind of reimagined what the company might be.
Yeah.
We pursued early days thinking that we'd be a software company. You asked about how has the company evolved. So
Yeah.
early on, we thought we'd be a software company. For a variety of reasons, mainly being demand, we pivoted into more of a kind of collaboration service type model where we were bringing our technology along with our know-how and expertise
Hmm.
to collaborators that we could work with, where we didn't just put the technology in their hands. We did a lot of the research on our side and then brought more strategic thinking to them rather than just being kind of button pushers.
Right.
Um,
Right.
no disrespect.
No, of course. But
Um,
so you pivoted based on what people really wanted and then
yeah,
adjusted to the sort of market in that way.
yeah, followed the market. I would say that we made the same mistake that a lot of academics make, which is we had a solution in search of a problem.
Right.
We thought we knew the problem. It wasn't totally naive in the sense of the strategy, but we were naive to what the actual problems were in
Hmm.
industry. Um, we listened to those early. We knew to do that, and so pivoted along the way.
Hmm.
Being a bootstrapped company, meaning that we survived on revenues. We didn't go seek an investment um, on day one or really since then. Meant that we had to listen to what the market was telling us
Hmm.
because it was the only way we were going to keep the lights on and survive.
Right. Right. And what was that problem that you eventually ended up addressing and solving for your the market? I would say.
That there was a hunger for not just the technology, but the know-how and the domain expertise in when to use that technology, when not to use the technology, uh, what technology tells you, can tell you,
Hmm.
cannot tell you. Um, there's a need for that. There's a lot of biotechs that spin out every day around the world. They're usually born out of chemistry labs, biology labs, biochemistry labs, and they can benefit a lot from the type of tools that we build,
Hmm.
but they're not necessarily interested in climbing that learning curve, nor do they have the luxury of time to
Yeah.
climb that that
Hmm.
learning curve. And so that's where being developers of technology, but also understand the domain really well
Hmm.
of where that technology is applied is a huge asset for us.
And that's like a perfect fit from your background as well with computational chemistry and also just the foundational chemistry in a sense. I imagine that in the team as well, you had a variety of different um, expertise and knowledge. The team is also growing now. What is the current composition of the team, and how would you plan to see it grow in the next couple of years too?
Yeah, so we started just the two of us, myself and Nick,
Yeah.
who was
And Nick
still
is from what kind of background?
Nick is an organic chemist by
Okay.
training, but he's the original kind of developer of the technology. It in a lot of ways stems back to like his postdoc research, and
Okay.
that's where it kind of spurred from. So in 2018, when we sat down in our first ever office, Nick was still a full time prof, is still a full time prof.
Okay.
So I was doing a lot of the research. He was helping out for sure, but it was small and slow going because I was wearing all the hats.
Yeah.
Since then, we've been able to kind of slowly but surely add to the team. Really, really bright people that have kind of good leadership tendencies and want to make meaningful contributions. That strategic piece, they want to think critically.
Hmm.
And so slowly but surely, we added over those, since the last kind of 6 years, almost 6.5. We've added a couple people kind of every year. Certainly early days, it was slow going. Our first hire was kind of more formally 2020.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, we've looked to build complementary expertise in the team from quantum chemistry all the way up to kind of structural biology and a
Okay.
lot of things in between,
Yeah.
medicinal chemistry in between, um, and different kind of pieces that come up in drug design projects.
Yeah.
We really look to recruit who we're going to join. So the technical expertise is one piece, but then also the cultural fit, the relationship with the rest of the team. We look to build those over time
Hmm.
and follow more of a recruiting than a hiring.
Yeah.
We only ever put out one hiring ad, two, correct myself. Scientifically, we only ever put out one hiring ad, and it was the first person we ever formally hired.
Okay.
I just put out I had no idea what I was doing, and I put out a very generalist call
Yeah.
over Twitter, what was formerly known as Twitter,
Yeah.
and maybe LinkedIn as well, basically saying, this is what we're doing. I don't know what this job will entail. There's a lot of flexibility, a lot of opportunity to be creative with it, but we knew that we needed extra help,
Somebody. Yeah.
extra hands,
Hmm.
extra brain. Somebody, thankfully, replied to that call,
Yeah.
and it was great. Really worked out in a lot of ways. Probably lucky for both of us because I think we
Yeah.
both took a lot of risk in that type of
I'm sure as well somebody who sees the
relationship.
post and just decides, oh yeah, let me just
Yeah,
sign up and
yeah. So
apply for
I'm
this job.
I'm I'm deeply grateful to her for taking that chance on me.
Hmm.
It worked out, thankfully, I think for both of us. But it just kind of rolled from there, and since then we've never put out a scientific hiring ad. We've always built relationships with students prior at conferences, at different networking events.
Hmm.
An unsolicited advice for any students listening is to go to those things and
Right.
try and build those relationships. If you're trying to build those relationships when you need them and like when you're looking for a job, it's too late.
Hmm.
It's really hard to organically build that kind of trust and confidence early on, or sorry, like immediately.
Immediately, of
You
course.
should build it early on,
Right.
um, and maybe you won't need it tomorrow. Maybe you don't need it the next day. But the more and more network you can build, the more you can call on it when you need
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
And so we take that position as well. There are times where we're looking for somebody all of a sudden, and we didn't know that we were going to be looking for that person. Some opportunity came up, or some expertise is needed, or something, and then we can kind of go back to our kind of unofficial Rolodex of,
Yeah.
hey, we know these people, they have these expertise. We already kind of have a confidence in them, a trust that they align with our mission, with our company values. Let's call them up and see what they're up to, see if
Hmm.
they're graduating soon, see if they're looking for an internship. And so we do a lot of that kind of outreach and things like that.
Yeah, I mean that's usually how it goes. I guess it's a lot of network is your net worth, and especially here when I remember you were when I first came in, I saw like the value chart on the wall and like our company values, our mission, and just building that culture fit is really important. So if you know someone that could really fit well into the company, work well with the team, because obviously they already work well with that person, then it's a good start. So we had actually met at the What's New in Chemistry event, like across the street.
That's right.
And so yeah, it was testament to the value of getting out there and reaching out to people and being available and yeah, showing your interest, I guess.
It's transparently. It's I think a lot of folks see participating in those events as a speaker, as a panel member.
Hmm.
They see that as a an altruistic. I'm giving back to the community, and there's certainly an element of that. As a student, I don't want to say lament, maybe that's too harsh, but we didn't have much of that.
Right.
I think career days for us were really big companies setting up a table in the lobby and giving out pens, and
Yeah.
students would go get a free a free
Probably
pen
give
and
their
some
paper
kind of food,
CVs
and
and
it was very inorganic, non-natural almost in
right,
some
right,
ways.
right.
um,
Transactional almost.
yeah, and so having something that is informative, especially about an industry that is growing here locally. I told you that when I was a student, the industry was kind of collapsing. It was headed in
Right.
the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Now it's really changed, and
Hmm.
students need to know that they don't need to leave. If they want to stay here, there are opportunities for them, not just in computational chemistry, but broadly. There's a lot of companies here in Montreal, across the province, across the country, that provide opportunities, and they don't need to
Hmm.
leave. They can continue to be here and have relevant work opportunities that would let them continue to research. So
Hmm.
coming kind of back, I think people see that as, oh, I'm only giving, but transparently, you also get, when you participate in those things, you get to meet students, you get to build those relationships. They start somewhere, and you never really know where they're going to lead.
Yeah.
You need to kind of plant those seeds early, and take shots on goal, and see what comes of it. It's not, I hate to make it sound transactional and with an agenda.
Hmm.
It's not that, but it's also not that. I mean, you're planning for the future for kind of mutual benefit.
Hmm.
And so I like to do a lot of those events, as schedule permitting and family time permitting,
Of
and things like
course.
that.
Yeah, no, that's some great advice, I think. And it's good to be realistic as you're mentioning. It's not um, simply just to meet that person, perhaps, but also uh, in vision of helping them in some way, but also helping yourself, perhaps, kind of mutual beneficial, sort of symbiotic relationship, if you want the biological term for
There you go.
that.
Since the beginning, I've taken a stance, seeing how things go in San Francisco.
Yeah. Is that how it
Uh,
kind of is there as well?
it's just such a well-oiled ecosystem,
Hmm.
and you see that to make that go, kind of everybody has to contribute.
Right.
And I would say that in the early days of our ecosystem re-emerging and kind of reblossoming, everybody has to contribute even more.
Yeah.
And if you want to see it grow, you really have to put in the effort. Um, and so taking the stance that somebody else's somebody else's success here is also our success, and
Hmm.
rising tides
Hmm.
raise all boats, kind of thing. And so that's made it really easy to identify where we say yes and where we try to make our effort to support the group, the community here at large, even though maybe it's not showing up on our budget sheet tomorrow. That's not the driving factor.
Hmm. Having that long-term vision and that community aspect too. I mean, Montreal is like obviously a very bustling scene with AI and startups, and
Yep.
it's growing very fast. And I think it's good that people start to realize and start to incorporate those that culture of meeting people, networking, but not necessarily in a very transactional way. But as you mentioned, as in San Francisco, the very well-made ecosystem that helps everybody. Everybody just gets better in that sense. But
You can't, when it's still kind of in its infancy, let's say. I mean, I think we're a little past our infancy here, but
hmm.
when it's in its infancy, you can't take it for granted. And I think that that's also a mistake that a lot of folks make from academia to industry, is they just assume it's always going to be there and the
Right.
opportunities are always going to be there. It doesn't work that way.
Hmm.
You need to contribute. You'll get back what you put in. If you don't put in much, one day it can all be gone. I mean, if you ask people that were in the industry in those difficult years, they'll tell you that poof, you know, there's a few reasons for that, but we need to work all together, and we need to be, someone who's now an advisor to us, but has been a long-standing figure in our community, Didier Lecomte,
Hmm.
said in an event that everybody in their roles need to have courage to take a risk, to participate, and to contribute. And when you say you need to have courage to take a risk, it's because you might fail. And a lot of people are wary of that. They want the sure thing, the sure bet. It's very much a Canadian mentality as well, unfortunately.
Hmm.
Um, it doesn't mean we're not capable of it, but certainly the life science community requires, the growth of the life science community requires that we take those risks and collectively have that courage
Hmm.
to go together and take chances. So for students that are looking for positions, I encourage you to have the mindset of wanting to contribute and wanting to build and roll up your sleeves and do something more meaningfully.
Yeah, not being afraid of failing, and rather failing faster if possible, and then
If you're going to be an
learning from
entrepreneur,
that.
absolutely. Even
Hmm.
if you're going to join a company, having an entrepreneur's mentality of, I want to contribute
Right.
meaningfully, strategically, creatively, super important. And companies will see value in that
Hmm.
compared to, I'm just looking for a job and it doesn't really matter where it is.
Right. 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 And I think you're doing the right part in going to these events, and kind of transmitting that vision to the younger students, myself included, and all these aspiring individuals that want to get into the field but maybe lack a bit of guidance and vision, having that kind of mentality of you know, getting deep into it, not fearing failure necessarily, and trying to make an impact really personally, for perhaps, you know, some kind of greater good, or your own sense. But that's something very important. I'm glad that you're going about and spreading that vision, because it's something that people need as well. Not just it's difficult to do it yourself when there's nobody else, you know, giving you that advice, of course.
Yeah, no, it
So
requires everybody to kind of raise their hand and contribute. And
yeah.
it's not for everyone, and everybody has their different priorities and life circumstances. Like there's all kinds of things that play into um, what your risk tolerance is and what type of job you could take on, at what scale is your contribution.
Hmm.
But I can tell you that outside of taking care of my team, who I'm accountable to, one of the most rewarding things is seeing students, like you, that I've met before, that I see are kind of making that effort. And some of them are very kind to say things like, something you said, sparked something in me. Um, there's little in my job that is more rewarding than that, because to me, that's what we need for the community to live on, for the next generation to be able to work in this industry. Um, Building an ecosystem doesn't happen in a day, and it doesn't happen by one person. And we need. There are lots of people that do the same thing. They inspire. They try to inspire. The next generation of students to take up the mantle. I'm small potatoes compared to those folks. Um, but I love when I see, even if it's not.
But you do your part at the same time.
I try.
It's
I try. There's no guarantees, and there's no straight lines that are drawn back, anywhere. It's a lot of factors that come in.
Mhm.
I think everybody kind of, again, making their contribution, and feeling that sense of pride in the community as a whole growing. We want to be able to say, hey, we're a company based in Montreal, and someone in Boston or in San Diego, San Francisco, or in Germany or Switzerland or the UK, they say, oh, like, I take that seriously, and that
Yeah,
comes with weight.
yeah.
Right now,
I think we're
we're
advancing
we're
towards that
advancing
stage
there,
in the
but
right direction, at least.
certainly, but it doesn't carry the same weight as I'm building a biotech in Boston.
Right.
and I don't think we'll ever be Boston. There's a lot of reasons for that. It's not because we can't. It's because
Even like geographically
the
sometimes,
nature of
politically.
everything is different. But we can be our own powerhouse. Uh, we need to look at what that means for Montreal and for Quebec and for Canada.
Hmm. It's a nice high level overview and vision as well. It's good to take a step back and look at that sometimes. But I want to now step back into your what you were saying before when you were starting into like the forecaster, having to wear all those different hats.
Mm.
Um, Obviously, you weren't necessarily trained or had the exact training for all the specific hats you were going to wear.
Mm.
How did do you have to learn it on the job? Did you have to outsource some of your work? How was it learning all that stuff immediately and having to learn it because otherwise you wouldn't be able to continue with molecular forecasting.
Yeah. So for full transparency, at UCSF, I took a class called Startup 101.
Mm-hmm.
We have actually analogous courses here now in Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
There are slight differences, but it's basically hands-on build a company in like 15
Okay.
weeks.
Yeah.
And at UCSF, it was, I don't remember if it was once or twice a week, but basically each class was 3 hours, where the first hour was a theory kind of lecture on a topic like legal, like marketing, like finance,
Mm-hmm.
like storytelling, pitching, things like that. The second hour was kind of a case study anecdote. They would bring somebody in from the community to talk to kind of a real world experience. And then the third hour was spent with your team, um, putting those things into practice.
Okay.
And then at the end of the 15 weeks, you pitch
Yeah.
to real investors.
Okay.
I mean, that's UCSF is super well respected in that community, and people know what comes out of that course.
Right. Right.
I didn't want to bring my venture because I kind of knew what I was doing already, and I wasn't necessarily looking for teammates at that time. So I joined a team. We built a telemedicine platform for rural Jamaicans.
Okay. Great.
We had an MD
Yeah.
in our team from that area who knew this was a problem, that people couldn't access medical care in rural areas. Something that I'm super not knowledgeable in, something that I could apply what I was learning to in a non-biased way and
Yeah.
really take an objective view at. So I learned a ton
Mm-hmm.
in doing that. It was super enlightening. I'll never forget that experience, nor
I'm sure. Yeah.
that MD in our team.
Yeah.
She was an incredible individual. Um, and so there was some training there in
Okay.
terms of like
It
how
definitely helped out
I was
with the startup
I was
culture.
constantly, in my own mind, building analogy to my own company
Right.
and jotting notes and taking ideas and things like that. Then when I came back here and started full time and was more or less by myself on those day to day things, relied on that training,
Mm-hmm.
relied on some common sense, because I think some of entrepreneurship is common sense. Relied on some Shark Tank feedback, in some way.
Yeah.
I think that's
Of
some of it
course.
is manufactured, but some of it is
I'm
actually
sure there's some good
interesting feedback.
insights once in a while.
It was something that I was entertaining for me, and so
Yeah.
watching it, so I took some of that, and then relied on network. Again, not knowing that some of my closest friends from elementary, high school that I kept in touch with and remained friends with would become lawyers, would become
Right.
accountants, and so leaning on them for a bit of informal advice and things like that when I had little questions, super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Family members, um, have an uncle that's an entrepreneur, built a business. So not in our domain, but
Still,
problems,
related
yeah,
advice for sure.
challenges with people,
Yeah.
challenges with sales, challenges with, they're analogous across industries.
Yeah.
There's certainly nuance and there's certainly differences, but there's a lot of similarities. And so
Mm-hmm.
leaning on that network, building up kind of a group of informal advisors, people that are generous with their time, that just the same, they want to help people, they want to give back. I benefited from that a lot, and in turn tried to pay it forward.
Right.
Often you can't pay it back. Those people's time is very valuable, and especially starting out, you can't necessarily give them what they deserve, but what they deserve is for you to pay it forward and
Mm-hmm.
then try to help others and things like that. So yeah,
Right.
challenges come up, you try to tackle them. I built my own bookkeeping spreadsheets to the point that my accountant said I could probably sell them as a side business.
Wow. Yeah, you became an
Um,
expert in like everything you were doing almost.
I just tried to be efficient, tried
Right.
to automate what I could. Some of my computer science training came in handy for things like that. But basically, my back and forths with him, he was generous with his time in terms of what was the most that I could do so that he could do the least. And then I would
Right.
have to pay him the least for him to do those things.
Uh-huh.
So I took that information and tried to automate on my side how to calculate, consumption taxes, GST, PST,
Uh-huh.
how to get my receivables, payables, learn all that jargon in accounting. Um, Legal had maybe a bit more support, did a little bit less on my own,
Uh-huh.
just because you always want to be careful with those
Yeah, you want to be
things.
sure of what you do for sure.
And the rest was kind of common sense. I worked while I was in university. I worked in the service industry.
Hmm.
I had jobs at a game store, at lens crafters, uh, where I worked part in the lab, but part also out on the floor selling glasses. And
Uh-huh.
that person to person dynamic, how to engage with people, how to build a relationship, how to connect beyond just what you're trying to offer them, um, really gets you clarity on how to figure out what someone needs and then whether or not you can provide that. It's not about selling people. It's not about pulling wool over their eyes. It's about you're
Helping them
looking
out,
you're
of
looking for
course.
X, and here's what I can provide.
Hmm.
That is X. So that was also very informative for me. So
Hmm.
coming back to kind of those experiences you have before and what makes you unique is important.
Hmm. It seems like you pull these insights from all these different domains, your experiences, and trying to notice, these analogous, as you're mentioning, advice or key factors in different domains, even Shark Tank or even your work at Lenscrafters, leaning into automation, leaning into your network whenever possible, getting the word out is key. Um, and yeah, just being open to finding these specific insights from wherever you might previously not think to find those. So keeping that open mind is important, I guess.
it's it's in a lot of ways how I've kind of always learned, and how I relate to other people is trying to put myself in their seat.
Right.
So it's in some ways natural to me.
Hmm.
I've since learned in more kind of formal leadership training that self reflection is a huge part of kind of improving yourself. And part of that is self awareness and knowing your strengths and weaknesses. Part of it is also reflecting on where you had success and where you had challenge,
Hmm.
and that's something that I didn't do necessarily with as much intention then, but I was in a lot of ways lucky to be doing it. Uh,
Almost unconsciously, I
yeah,
guess.
so I can't say that it was like this. I had a plan and it all came
No, of
together.
course.
Um, we could talk about kind of the idea of being good to be lucky and lucky to be good. There's a
Hmm.
lot of luck that goes into this. Um,
But
but
there's
not
a certain sense. There's different kinds of luck, of course. You can,
well,
I
sure.
guess, use your own luck and eventually creating all those opportunities will eventually probably lead you to a relatively, correct direction or where you want to go in a
That's
certain
it.
sense.
That's it. You can control creating the possibility of opportunity.
Right.
You can't necessarily always create the opportunity itself. And I think
Okay.
that as a student, that can always sometimes be challenging. When a company turns you away for a job position, it may just be bad timing. It may have nothing to do with you. And it's sometimes hard to accept that there's nothing else you could have done. In some ways, that's comforting. I know that I speak from a position of privilege to say that,
Hmm.
but it's not necessarily because
But
you did
not
anything wrong. It's not because, and that happens in entrepreneurship too, right? You build a company at just the wrong time.
right.
A lot of people will reflect on big companies like Airbnb, like Uber,
Yeah.
and
A lot
and
of it's timing too.
for sure, it's needs of society, it's needs of community, and they were right for the time they were built, and it's the same for us. We're no exception. If we tried to build molecular forecaster today and bootstrap the way that we have, would we be able to?
Maybe, maybe not.
Maybe, maybe not. Um,
So I guess yeah, focusing on those inputs, what you can actually do, and then whatever comes back to you, those outputs, those external materializations, in a sense, the job opportunity, whether that you hear back, that sometimes you don't actually control. So yeah, keeping that mindset of not beating yourself down for it, accepting failure in a sense, and just focusing on what you can do yourself, what actionable things you can do, and not what you can't control.
Also, and that's the thread, and coming back full circle to
Yeah,
what you said about kind of leaning on old experiences. I guess I've kind of always thought, like, what else do I have?
yeah.
What else makes me different than everybody else?
What are your
It's
strengths? And
it's previous things, and I tell that to students frequently. We go through elementary and high school trying to fit in and trying to be the same as everybody. From that point forward, once you leave high school, your goal is to distinguish yourself as much as possible. What makes you different?
hmm
And that's sometimes hard in a the mentality change. B, sometimes it feels lonely to
hmm
be different, and you don't want that. Um, and C, it we're surrounded by like-minded people, and so it dilutes achievements.
hmm
That's another thing that I frequently tell students: go to your graduations. Some people see it as a chore. I see it as an opportunity to celebrate yourself.
hmm
And in the broader world, it's a huge achievement to get a bachelor's of arts, a bachelor's of science, to get a master's degree, a PhD. A lot of people brush this off because they're on to the next thing, and everybody around them in their research lab is getting the same achievement.
Right.
But that's, sometimes 5 people, 10 people.
It's just perspective at the end.
The world is a really big place, and a lot of people don't
hmm
have PhDs. And so going to allow yourself to be celebrated is important. And let your family celebrate you, your friends celebrate you, and you celebrate you. It's that one way of kind of distinguishing yourself and leaning on what makes you different. And that does make you different, even though it doesn't feel that way.
That's some great advice. I don't want to take up too much of your time either.
Yeah, well, I don't want to
I
go over on our recording.
Yeah.
So.
No, but I do want to look quickly and talk about the current AI developments and how
hmm
that's going to affect. We're talking about students, developing these critical thinking skills, developing all these important networking skills and everything. How is that going to affect, do you think, in the education and also in your own sector, like professionally, personally? How you see it being used more often? How do you think it might affect it?
Yeah, so there's like a learning angle to this, and
Yeah.
there's also like an application angle and kind of real world utility
hmm
angle. I would say that, like any other technology, there is some kind of pendulum that swings between, oh, this technology is going to solve all our problems. Oh, this technology is actually useless and we're not going to use it at all. And the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. Um, the more kind of cross trained you can be, I think the more benefit you have. Now, the flip side of that is the more cross trained you are, the less of an expert
Right.
you are in one thing.
Where's the balance?
So, you know, one piece of advice that I would have is think about kind of what kind of industry you're working in. Here we're talking about biotech. What kind of company do you want to work with? And then talk to people that work in those companies. Scientists like to talk, case in point, and sometimes ramble, case in point. But they're usually willing to give 15, 20, 30 minutes of their time, offer to buy them coffee. They'll take you up on that, and pick their brain a little bit about their day to day. What's useful for them? What's their training like? And then complement that with what your interests are, and
hmm
what you want to do. Don't necessarily just do what they tell you, but put that all together. Chances are that will be reflective of other businesses. Don't just ask one person, ask a couple. Get a view of where the industries are going, and try to put those things together. Now, in terms of biotech, like, I'm
hmm
certainly a believer that computational tools can help us advance drug discovery.
I hope so.
Well, that said, this isn't new.
Right.
Computational tools have been helping advance drug design for 40 years and more. Um, the nature of those technologies and the scale and the speed, that has certainly evolved.
hmm
Um, skeptics will say statistics have been helping us forever, and everything that's machine learning is just advanced statistics.
Just yeah, mathematics to a certain degree.
Maybe is a bit harsh and a bit, discounting what some of the new algorithms can do.
At least in
But
terms of efficiency, like you can't those machine learning models you might use today, like you can't. To some point, they were fundamentally there before with statistics and everything, at the same basis, but they weren't there in terms of efficiency, in terms of time. You couldn't actually use them
Well, the compute power
realistically.
wasn't there, right? So
Right.
hardware has advanced, software is advancing, and
Yeah.
know-how is advancing, and you kind of
The
have these,
algorithms themselves as well. So.
you have all these things kind of moving in parallel. And so the more one advances, it opens up new opportunities for others. And
Hmm.
the more other efforts have advanced, a lot of people point to the PDB, the protein data bank.
Right.
This has been an effort to develop structural information over decades.
And now all of a sudden,
Well, now all of a sudden you have AlphaFold,
yeah.
right? And you couldn't have had AlphaFold without that in a lot of ways. And so every new thing advances something else. And so I'm skeptical of this is going to revolutionize the way we do drug design. Personally, I'm skeptical of that. I do think that there's room for incremental progress. I also think it's important to dream bigger and not just be satisfied with incremental progress,
Hmm.
right? You need to. Someone put it once and not to go to SpaceX, but someone put it: you aim for Mars, and if you land on the moon, like that's okay for failure,
Yeah.
right? And you got to keep aiming high,
Shoot for the stars, aim for the moon.
but keep coming back to kind of what's realistic
Right.
in short order. And there's all kinds of different ways to look at this. 1% progress every day leads to sizable progress over time. Whereas if you don't make that progress, you stagnate, and,
Right.
and, and
Right.
that's true. So we're probably somewhere in the middle. The more students have that ambition to push those boundaries and apply new things, I think the more we'll push the industry. But you can't neglect the decades of experience that exists in the companies that are around, in the minds of scientists that are there. You need to do your best to kind of balance these things, and put them together.
Hmm. Complement them, as you were saying, right? Seeing what are the strengths of the coming back to what students should do to get into the field, right? How to complement your own strengths.
I'm a big
And
believer in balance, and in all senses, which means in some kind of contradictory way, we need people that shoot really big and don't care about balance, and they're
right.
really ambitious.
Right.
They'll be balanced out by people that are very conservative, and we're okay with kind of status quo, and we still design medicines. That
Hmm.
said, like the way we design medicines is challenging and has gaps and has challenges. We need to keep striving to address those, but everything kind of happens in harmony and balance. You just need to stay grounded in some way.
Right. I guess it's difficult to predict what's going to happen. As you mentioned, it could be incremental progress. It could be massive paradigm shifts that you just don't see coming at all. So we'll just have to see how it goes and be optimistic, but also rationalist and sort of realist at the same time. Um,
It's hard to be both at the same time.
it is, but as you're mentioning, it's a good balance, or everything in balance. But talking about balance, how do you keep balance in your own life as well, compared to not just work and education, but you're a father at the same time.
Yeah,
You love hockey. Like, how do you keep all that balance?
it's not easy. I think you need kind of a clarity for yourself. It comes back to that self-reflection, self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of need clarity where your priorities are. My priority is my family and will always be my family. I have two young ones as of this recording, like 1.5 and 4.5. Um, it's important to me to be at home. It's important to me that they know who their dad is, and I want to watch them grow up.
Mm-hmm.
Being an entrepreneur puts a lot of requirements on you, and I have now 10 other employees that depend on me too, and I don't carry that weight lightly. It was probably the most um, impactful event as an entrepreneur was the first time that we hired someone,
Right. Right. Right.
and the weight of like them putting food on the table is
Yeah.
my responsibility. Before that, it was my own risk, and I took my own risk, and it was for me, and I could answer for that. But now other people are putting their faith in me,
Mm-hmm.
to continue to pay them so that they can live their lives. So it's about organizing your time, finding out what the right balance is. For me, like on average, from kind of 5 to 8, 4:30 to 7:30, 4 to 8, whatever you want to call it. Like I'm with my kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
My phone is next to me for emergencies, but I'm not checking email. I'm not on my laptop. I'm with my kids. That's when they're home from daycare. It's before they go to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
and we spend time together. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. that's on average,
Right.
right? There are nights where there's a student event, and you gotta go, and there are other days where maybe there's daycare is closed, and instead of finding a babysitter, no, I'm going to take the day off and I'm going to spend my time with my kids. So balance, balance is never 50-50 in anything. This is not 50-50 either. Over time, you try to get it there, but that's the way that's what's been important to me. You have to accept what the consequences of that are. No, I'm not traveling across the world every other week to go meet whoever and go to all the conferences. It's just not for me.
Hmm.
Advice to students that want to enter entrepreneurship: you have to gain clarity over time in what kind of entrepreneur you want to be, what kind of business you want to build, and this is the type of business that I want to build. One that's sustainable, that is not a flash in the pan, and
Hmm.
sustainable things can be built over time.
And one that allows you as well to have that moderation with your own
Absolutely,
family.
absolutely. It's a big, it's an unquantifiable compensate form of compensation.
Yeah.
I'm probably underpaid for my job and what I do, but I am paid substantially in my freedom and my time, and that's what's important to me. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong.
Hmm.
That's just what's for me.
Hmm.
There are other entrepreneurs. I have friends, colleagues that they live it very differently, and they love it, and that's
Everybody
great.
has
We
their own
need we need
values, of
all
course.
kinds. What's important, I think, as an entrepreneur is that you also have your team live by kind of a similar set of values.
Right. It's that
So when
cultural
my
fit.
team has family things, they want some time off. Um, they have other priorities in life that is not their work. I have to be understanding of that, and I more than am.
Hmm.
People bring their full selves here. They are themselves. Um, that's it's important. Again, with the view on people being here long term, enjoying what they do, not dreading coming to work, not being a
Hmm.
flash in the pan and burning out from there. Um, Having that mentality means that we attract a certain type of people here. And I'm biased, but I'd like to think that people here are happy. We have a great kind of
Oh, when
community
I
in the
walked
team.
in, everybody seemed to have a smile on their faces and everything. So it
Yeah,
seemed like a
we told them before
yeah,
you're better
everybody.
off being. Yeah,
But no, it seems like a very understanding place to work, and there's a good balance and a good moderation between getting stuff done and like pushing the boundaries of science. You're saying,
as a service provider, you have to be efficient. You have to still turn things around.
yeah.
Because again, it's not just for you; it's for your partner, it's for your collaborator who you're working with.
Hmm.
So, like, I don't like the work hard, play hard. Like, I think that's kind of overstated as well. It's about doing the job that you committed to and that you're hired to do, and not always going above and beyond. Like, nobody can give 120% every day, every hour. Like, that's just not realistic. Um,
Hmm.
Over time, you give what you can, and if you're ready to do more, then everything changes.
Hmm.
Your benefits, your responsibilities, your accountabilities, they follow suit.
But that consistency is key.
Consistency is everything. It is what will distinguish between those that succeed and those that don't.
Hmm.
Guaranteed. And so you have to find at what level you're prepared to be consistent.
Right, right, right. And just coming back to that balance, a good way maybe to put it that I'd heard a few times is everything in moderation, even moderation itself. So
There you go.
as you're saying, it's not 50-50 all the time. Sometimes it's a lot, right? Always have to spend time with your family. And sometimes it's like, oh, wow, we've a lot to do with like the forecaster, got to get back to work.
Yep.
It's navigating that balance, I guess.
And you only succeed in doing that in an environment built on trust and communication and
Hmm.
feedback and transparency. And again, I say that from a position of privilege, being the boss, though I hate that term. um, I've come to appreciate a bit more that dynamic, which is something I wasn't used to.
Being a leader within your team, and
Just being no that I'm comfortable with.
yeah,
It's the weight that your words carry
yeah,
as being in this position, and the way that people interpret what you say. As much as you might want to be, like, the idea that your workplace is your family is stupid. I don't believe that, but I think I was naive to think that even more than that, I was everybody's friend.
hmm
And I think you can be friendly, but at the end of the day, your employees see you as their employer.
Right.
And there's certain things that don't necessarily and maybe shouldn't cross that employee-employer boundary. That was new for me
Okay.
because I'm somebody that is when I trust, I'm kind of all in. I'm open, I'm transparent, and in an employee-employer relationship, it's not always easy for an employee to do that. That's something I've had to learn and
Okay.
accept that what I try to give is not necessarily what I'll always get back in return. And there's reasons for that. It's not because of me and it's not because of them. It's because of the nature of their relationship.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, great. And just coming back to more like the forecast, your team, everything you're doing. What are some things you see gonna happen? What are some goals you have maybe the next 5, 10 years, and then eventually as well for yourself? What are some where do you see yourself in those in that 5, 10 year span?
So certainly right now, I mean, it's to continue to grow, maybe to a certain point. I don't know that the type of business model that we're following now lends itself to like 1,000-person company. I don't think that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
We don't have in mind to become a biotech developing its own assets. That's not necessarily what we think our strengths are. Um, that said, we have room to grow. We have room to invest in product development and still innovating in the space. It's important to do that. I think we like, it's our mission to kind of help more broadly rather than just our own within our own four walls.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so being a partner in some way, regardless of what that business model is, but working with others to try and advance multiple drug design
Initiatives. Yeah.
programs is important to us. In 10 years, I mean, as of right now, I'd like to still be operating. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of companies, realistically and just being pragmatic, like they don't necessarily survive that long.
Hmm.
I think we're on track to do that. We've already made it 6.5. So who's to say
Congrats.
why not? We're sustainable. We're growing. I love my job. I'd love to be able to pay everyone more, to be even more sustainable, to have more initiatives. There's lots of things that we have discussed internally, strategically, things we want to build, things that we think make meaningful difference. But we need to grow to a point where we have the resources to do that. If I could be doing this for the next 10 years, and again have that, unquantifiable compensation
Uh
of
huh.
still,
Freedom.
having my family. There's
Yeah.
a lot of entrepreneurs that speak about, I'm on my fifth company and my fifth partner, and like I don't want to be that at all. So the more I can continue to do that and be a contributing member in the community here, however the community needs, sitting here right now, like I think I'd be a happy man in 10 years. Maybe with a little bit less hair, like we were discussing earlier, but that's what's in it for me.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. But yeah, thank you so much for the time. I
Pleasure.
think your journey is definitely inspiring to a lot of students, myself included. We can learn many different things, especially from the conversation we had. A lot of key insights, and having balance. I guess to summarize is yeah, having balance, leaning into your network, that people-oriented mentality. Remember that you work with people, and also that the world is managed and is driven by people, so that responsibility is important. And yeah, remembering that what are the things that are most important to you, whether it's your family, whether it's accomplishing something greater than you, keeping that in mind, and then building from there. So thank you so much for the time and your effort in the conversation. So
Thanks to you, Thomas,
yeah,
for taking the time. Like I said, if it's helpful to one person,
I
then to
I
me
think it will be.
it's a success, and I congratulate you on kind of this endeavor. I'm, like I said, humbled to be number one,
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
and maybe one day you got as many subscribers as Joe Rogan out here. So looking forward to see who all, other guests you have on and where this goes. So kudos to you for trying something new.
For sure. Thank you.